So I've recently started playing Dead Space 2023 on my PC because I found it was free for Xbox Game Pass owners. For whatever reason, I missed the series when it first released in 2008. I was too busy being a Bakugan brawler and trading go-go crazy bones. Also, my mom denied me the glorious pleasure of sinking my little meaty fingers into a game rated M. There were also loopholes to get my desire for violence and gore satisfied. Knowing nothing about the game and diving straight into the gameplay, I was able to decide for myself what all the hype was about. And I mean, come on, give me some credit. The last time I jumped into a game on Xbox Game Pass without reading any reviews was for the game Firewatch, which was more of a walking simulator while listening to a podcast of two middle-aged people slowly falling in love over some clever banter about hiking in the woods. I was afraid of being bored to death, and I decided for myself that I would never again take a step outside my comfort zone and try a game that hasn't popped up in my Discord or been recommended by a friend that I trusted until now. And boy, oh boy, was I surprised. The ambience of the game completely surrounded me as I was teleported to an off-world future, fighting aliens as a ship system engineer. He finds himself aboard various spaceships infested with grotesque creatures called necromorphs. These creatures were once humans, transformed by an alien artifact known as the Marker, which is awfully reminiscent of another extremely influential sci-fi horror movie we have all come to love for its horror elements and jaw-dropping atmospheres. In the first game, Isaac responds to a distress signal from the USG Ishimura, a mining ship that has gone dark. Upon arrival, he discovers the ship is overrun by necromorphs. Throughout the game, Isaac battles these creatures while uncovering the ship's secrets, including the origin and purpose of the Marker. Allowing the story to unfold where both the player and the main character were learning about the aliens simultaneously, it allowed for something in gaming that I think is essential for any narrative-driven game that explores themes of survival, insanity, and the consequences of tampering with unknown alien technologies. Both Isaac Clarke's personal journey and the journey of the player, who are both delving deeper into the origins of the alien infestation, looking for answers, became one. The merging of the player's experience fighting off the hordes of necromorphs and Isaacs are now the same thing. And if I were to look up a game review, it would tell me something like, the atmosphere in horror is so good, the game excels at creating a tense atmospheric environment, eerie sounds, dim lighting, or unique gameplay mechanics that make it feel satisfying to survive, a compelling story or an immersive sound design, or maybe go on about the graphic and artistic design, about the grotesque and detailed design of the necromorphs, and the future and deteriorating environments, and the overall graphic quality contributed to a visually striking experience. And all of these things add to the game and make it all the more immersive, making the experience of exploring the giant ship a visceral one. But none of these things are what separates it from the other games released today. These things are not what makes this game enthralling for 3 straight hours of exciting, thrilling gameplay. And now I'm very much in the camp of people that think what makes a game great isn't its graphical output or use of ray tracing and technological capabilities. That being said, this is a point that there has been a lot of dispute around. Some people would argue that the best era for gaming was the late 1970s to the early 1980s, also known as the arcade era. This era saw the rise of arcade games like the classics Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and Donkey Kong. It laid the groundwork for the industry's growth. The 90s witnessed the intense competition between Nintendo, Sega, and later Sony, resulting in iconic consoles like the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Genesis, one of my personal favorites, and the Sony PlayStation. This era birthed beloved franchises like Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Final Fantasy. Then, in the mid 2000s, it was a transition to 3D gaming. The transition from 2D to 3D gaming was a pivotal moment. Games like Super Mario 64, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and Metal Gear Solid showcased the potential of 3D worlds. In the late 2000s to early 2010s, online gaming and modern consoles saw the emergence of online gaming and made it mainstream, with titles like World of Warcraft, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii generation offering diverse gaming experiences. In 2010, the indie renaissance in advanced technology saw games like Minecraft or Undertale. Advanced technology also brought about VR gaming, pushing the boundaries of immersion. The peak of gaming can vary, depending on individual perspectives, but each era contributed significantly to gaming's evolution, including innovations, iconic titles, and groundbreaking advancements. Many argue that gaming continues to reach new heights as technology advances and creativity flourishes, making it challenging to pinpoint a singular peak. So what was it about this remake of Dead Space that had me captured from the jump? A feeling that modern-day games hadn't made me or my friends feel for a very long time. To get a sense of what kind of games were made in 2008, I think we should learn more about the caliber of game that was common. It was before the days of Red Dead Redemption 2, before Fallout 4, before even Minecraft. 2008 gaming was simple. 3D renderings and experiences were still in its infancy. Some of the games that came out in 2008 include Fallout 3, Call of Duty World at War, and Mario Kart Wii. Digital distribution wasn't as dominant, and most games were still purchased physically. This limited the accessibility of games, especially for independent developers trying to reach a wider audience. The games that were single-player often had a more restrictive open world due to the graphical and game size limitations. This affected how the mechanics and game elements were shaped in order to fit these limitations. This is why it was interesting experiencing the architecture of a game from 2008 with the graphical enhancements of a game from 2023. What it offered me in terms of a sit-down game experience shocked me, and what I learned was even more shocking. When the developer decides to restrict the player in some facets, it offers a more, not a less, but a more enriching experience. Dead Space? More like a live and really quite fun space. No, I'm sorry about that. That was a bad joke. From a game perspective, Dead Space doesn't do anything fancy, and they don't need to. Initially, because of the standard of video game I was used to, I dropped in feeling very restricted in the way I was supposed to solve some of the problems and fight off the aliens. I mean, come on, I could even press a button cluing me in on the exact direction I was supposed to go at any given moment and what my next objective was. There was no question in my mind what rooms I needed to clear, what puzzle I was supposed to solve, and how it fit into the overarching story. They pointed where I was supposed to go, and I went there like an obedient little lad. This linear and more restrictive storytelling did not affect my enjoyment of the game. This is because they did a really good job of developing the combat. This was the first game in a long time that made me feel a rush of adrenaline from its combat and dissecting how it works in live time. I'm currently playing the game on normal difficulty and it feels very balanced. In other words, I die the perfect amount of times. If I'm not conserving my ammunition properly and taking the time to loot hidden rooms and the dead necromorphs, I run out of ammo and am forced to fight the aliens by swinging helplessly. Or if I don't listen carefully and check my surroundings quickly, I'm engulfed by the mob of aliens who sneak up on me inevitably. The frustration of dying by not playing the game as efficiently as I could and restarting at my own manual save point was something I hadn't experienced in video games since my days on the Xbox 360 even, or the Nintendo Switch games that aren't quite as large as any studio single-player title of the past 5 years. The feeling of being limited with the different ways I could play the game forced me to be better at how I knew to play the game. Shoot the aliens, stay alive, be alert. Stripping the game down to these core elements made it far more satisfying to get better at these few things. I could feel myself entering a flow state, with the amount of times I died being an indication of how locked in I was. I died a lot initially in the game, I gotta admit, but it just made it feel all the more satisfying to go through a 30-minute stretch of the game, diving further into the story, and not dying, not having to return to a previous save point. The pure rush and excitement I felt staying locked in, anticipating jump scares and aliens creeping up behind me was similar to an arcade game you can find at Chuck E. Cheese. You know, sometimes being limited in the way you make a game and limiting the player by rendering them unable to freely explore and tackle things as they wish allows the developer to pour into their core game mechanics. There's nothing fancy about the architecture of Dead Space. Move forward, stay alive, shoot aliens.
What do you get from video games in general? Is there for you personally?
I mean, it's I don't know if it calms my mind. I mean, you sort of killing the demons in a video game calms the demons in my mind. Yeah, if you play a tough video game, you can get into like a state of flow, which is very enjoyable. But admittedly, it needs to be not too easy, not too hard, kind of in the Goldilocks zone. And I guess you generally want to feel like you're progressing in the game. So a good video, and there's also beautiful art, engaging storylines, and it's like an amazing puzzle to solve, I think.
I think I'm beginning to hone in on what it is that makes a video game better at providing us the experience of achieving this flow state. The feeling of getting better. When your objectives are clear and you have a clear way of progressing forward, the road becomes simple. Reach the next checkpoint, stay alive, shoot what is in front of you. The only thing that will determine your survival is how effectively you can do this. When I have indicators of my performance and it feels like I'm getting better simply through playing, there starts to be a convergence of how the game is requiring me to problem solve and my ability to do so. That feedback is told to me subliminally through my engrossment in the video game. I want a game that requires me to sit forward in my chair and think critically about how I'm going to approach my next challenge without overwhelming me with broken mechanics or a world with simply too many options. The game Dead Space 2023 is a telltale sign that something is wrong with the way we approach video games today. There is no reason a game built with the limitations of a 2008 game should feel better to play unless we are in some way overestimating what a gamer wants. It may seem like on paper it would be a good idea to make a game that simulates real life as much as possible, with an infinite amount of options and endless space in an open world to explore the endless possibilities it has to offer. But in most cases, this limits the developer to not fully flesh out every one of the mini-games within a larger game. Limiting the scope of what the game is trying to accomplish allows the game to accomplish more. I know, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense after hearing it at first, but think about it. If you're limiting the game to a few core mechanics, such as managing health, accomplishing objectives, and using weapons and battle strategy effectively, the developer can focus on these few things and make every one of them feel extremely rich, all while balancing the game and challenging the player's abilities and forcing them to get better. All of this is to say that maybe after all of these graphic upgrades, an increase in file sizes, and expanding what a game has to offer, maybe we should take a simpler approach at how we craft games. In a world where we are beholden to the illusion of options, maybe, just maybe, limiting what we want a game to accomplish will make it feel more game-like and increase its replayability, uniqueness, and charm.
If it's an important thing, limited choice.